And in the conversation today, we talked about ways to quickly arrive at a deal.
Well, for all the chest beating that the Liberal government did, they went down, met with Donald Trump, and came away with a firm decision to talk about it some more. Welcome back to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. I know many Canadians are out there feeling the pinch of the economic woes that the Liberal government has continued to perpetuate on us. I further realize that there are many jobs that have gone down south in anticipation of the booming economy of the United States of America, and how many corporations are taking advantage of the enormous tax benefits that you can gather by putting your company inside of the United States, not just the federal and state tax reprieves, compared to Canada's taxes. You won't have to pay for any tariffs as you try to import your product across the border into the United States. And Donald Trump and Mark Carney met. And of course, Mark Carney tried to make a big deal. It was going to tell you that he was going to make a plans right around the corner. We got it almost happening. Just like everything with the Liberal government, it never, ever, ever gets here. And as you heard Minister LeBlanc say, they left with a firm commitment to talk about it some more. However, as Mark Carney sits idly by on his hands, many Canadians are starting to really feel the pinch, not only of the economic woes, but of his mismanagement of crime and other issues. Sticking with the economy, however, there are projects inside of Canada that Mark Carney could be doing, but he's refusing to. I can't say for sure why he's not going to try to capitalize on the trillions of dollars that Canada could be manufacturing. I have my suspicions. However, before we get into it, I would encourage everybody to ensure that you're still subscribed, still hitting the notification bell, and I would further encourage you to share this video with all of your socials. All right, let's check it out. I have to tell you, I find it very telling that Mark Carney didn't do the press conference himself, that he sat there gushing over Donald Trump a couple hours prior, and that he's running all up and down Canada talking about how he's the man for the job. And then when he leaves away from the meeting with Donald Trump, the working lunch or whatever they were trying to market it as, he's not the one that speaks to the press. And I got to thinking that maybe it's because he's doing a different deal. Like maybe he's got some private business to look after. He went down Monday night to meet with Donald Trump Tuesday afternoon, and now he's not leaving again until Wednesday. So it's a very short commute to get from Washington, D.C. to New York. Perhaps he's meeting with other people that for other things, for his blind trust. Either way, I think it is telling that he sent Minister LeBlanc out to talk to the press over this lack of productivity and coming away with absolutely nothing.
So we concluded what I think was a successful, positive, substantive conversation with President Trump on trade issues.
Well, there you go. He had a good talk. Right up the Liberals' alley. I know you're losing your house and you're worried that your family's going to break apart and you have no idea what you're going to do with your future. And if you're a young man, you can't even consider moving out of your parents' house. But don't worry about it. Minister LeBlanc, three other MPs, and Prime Minister Carney had a nice talk with Donald Trump today.
It concluded with the President and the Prime Minister directing us, me and my colleagues, and the President, his cabinet secretaries who were there, Ambassador Greer, Secretary Lutnick, and others, to continue the conversation and to quickly land deals that will bring, we think, greater certainty in areas where the principal areas would be steel and aluminum and energy.
Again, steel, aluminum, and energy. I think I've heard the Liberals say that now, I don't know, it feels like 1,000 times. And they've been talking about it since April. There's no product, no movement, no productivity, nothing. Just more empty words. Don't worry about it, Canada. We're going to be talking about it. They came away from this meeting with a determination to set another meeting.
And in the conversation today, we talked about ways to quickly arrive at a deal.
To quickly arrive at a deal, Canada. So they are I mean, that feels to me like they got their thumb all over it. This is like, wow, we can't even expect it. Oh, wait, no, we've heard all of this before. We've seen this play out time and time again with the Liberal Party. He talks a big talk. He talked about being Mr. Businessman, Mark Carney. Mark Carney talked about being the only guy in the room the only guy in Canada that can handle dealing with Donald Trump. Donald Trump treats him like he's a child. Donald Trump treats him like he's like a kid in the room. Mark Carney gushes like Donald Trump's his idol or something like that. And Canadians do without, Canadians go hungry. And there's a lot of industry in Canada that could be happening if we didn't have this ideologue at the wheel. If people had a thought to themselves, wait, let me cast my vote smartly instead of casting my vote foolishly, because you voted against Donald Trump, and now Donald Trump is laughing at you. He's laughing at Mark Carney. Mark Carney, he's exposing to be not only a very weak leader, but a very poor businessman and a terrible negotiator, which I told you he could not negotiate with Donald Trump. Now, am I telling you that Pierre Poilievre or an NDP individual or anybody else that would have maybe run down there would have been in a better position? No. I am telling you, however, that at this time, 6-7 months later, Pierre Poilievre would have gotten rid of all of the 9 bills that are in the way, all of the 9 laws that are blocking productivity in Canada. And we at least would be looking at an enormous amount of jobs that would be helping to revitalize the country. A lot of steel goes into a pipeline. A lot of steel goes into shipbuilding. A lot of steel goes into bridges. A lot of steel goes into different kinds of things. And we could be utilizing Canadian steel for these Canadian products if only we didn't elect a zealot, an environmental fanatic whose only real idea seems to be to stop producing anything in Canada, even though his personal money is invested in all of the things that he wants Canadians to do without. And he was so invested in this conversation. He's so concerned about this problem that when he come away with the meeting with nothing, when he came away with the meeting with Donald Trump sent him on his way, he sent out Minister LeBlanc to talk to the media. I think we would do best in Canada if we were to look at this from a different perspective. Because I assure you, no matter which party line you walk along, no matter what your politics are, hunger does not care. Poverty doesn't care. And I think that we have to start thinking about what matters to this country. Everybody can sit around and talk about the utopia that each side of the political aisle wants to design when they have their bellies full and their houses secure. Poverty, on the other hand, well, you can look at any of 100 countries to see how that plays out politically. Of course, there are many business industries and many premiers in Canada that understand this. And they want Mark Carney to do something about the legislation that his zealotry, that his fanatical government has put in place to kill industry, to kill development, and as a result, to make many of his population hungry and homeless. Danielle Smith has come to Ottawa. Alberta has set up an office there now, and she's meeting with a group on the evening of time of recording. And she came before the reporters to talk to them and answer some of their questions. And I think that it's important to hear her put the gauntlet down for Mark Carney to say, hey, listen, we are giving you a deadline to make a decision. And the or else seemed to be inferred, though she didn't say it. Those are my words, not hers.
Will you be in a position to do so if the West Coast tanker ban is still in place by then?
Well, I can tell you that we are hoping to have some kind of agreement with the Prime Minister by Grey Cup, where he gives a clear indication that he's prepared to address the 9 laws that have been creating an investment climate that is hostile to private investment. The Pathways Project, which we're committed to reach carbon neutrality by 2050, as well as a bitumen pipeline to the BC coast. So we're working with the Prime Minister on an earlier timeline than that, and we're very hopeful that will come to fruition. So we'll know in a few more weeks. But the message I've had to the Prime Minister is that it's the oil sands companies who need to have confidence that they're going to be allowed to expand production in order to be able to fill a pipeline. And at the moment, because of the laws that are in place, they don't have that confidence. So that's why we have to deal with these things as a package.
On a side note, Canadians should be aware that the LNG that they do claim, the Mark Carney government does claim to have up and running while the refinery is broken down right now, and we actually are in negative productivity, if you can believe I'll do that in a different video. I just wanted to point it out that the one project that the Liberal government likes to talk about is actually broken. Now, you heard Danielle Smith say that she's put Mark Carney on notice by Grey Cup, which is in the middle of November, and she wants these 9 laws repealed. And she's taking this advice, this direction from the individuals who build pipelines for a living. Now, you might say, well, Mark Carney, he owns all kinds of pipelines, and he does. I did a video on it. However, he doesn't know how to build them. He just knows how to take other people's pension money and invest in them, make a profit for Brookfield or his investments, and then the people that whose pension money he's invested get a small, return on their investment. The individuals that Danielle Smith is referring to are what they call industry experts. These are individuals that understand what goes into building a pipeline, what goes into moving the product along the pipeline, what goes into putting it onto a ship, what goes into selling it in another market. I mean, you'd almost think that they were experts at the entire thing, and that any law that Mark Carney has put in the way of their expertise is only harming Canada and not helping Canada at all. Especially when you consider that there's nobody else. Look, the green agenda that everybody wants to talk about, that people out there on the NDP side of the aisle say is still going to make a difference. The world tried it for 10 years. It failed. It failed, guys. But you heard Danielle Smith still talk about the compromise. You heard her mention how she's talking about the Pathways project. Of course, pathways and carbon capture. Norway's made great strides with carbon capture. What I believe could come out of carbon capture is the way to capture other things, like the coal or many of the other emissions that are not necessarily carbon related. I don't want to take that too far afield in this video, but I do want to point out that the reason that I enjoy the carbon capture is not so much because I believe carbon is a problem, but because I believe that by developing the technology, it can go to other capture systems where we might be able to capture it out of water instead of out of fuel, or we might be able to capture it out of radiation from nuclear or any kind of thing like that. Like, I'm not saying that that's where it will go. I'm just saying that this is the kind of thing that once people start to look at it, once people start to put money into it, then somebody comes along with flash of brilliance and says, hey, you know what? If we take this and add it to that, we can do this. However, all of that aside, between the Alberta government and all of the industry in Alberta willingness to participate in carbon capture, in addition to their insistence that these 9 laws are in the way of their productivity, I believe that it's beholden of the Liberal government and Mark Carney to come in and say, we realize that our path has taken Canada down the wrong road, that the rest of the world has already arrived at the conclusion that we are no longer going to be able to worry about this net zero stuff at the timeline that has already been laid out by the Paris Accords. And therefore, we are going to be tabling a repeal on these 9 bills, so that in Canada we can get to work, because we can't get a deal with Donald Trump, and the whole wide world is taking our oil from the Donald Trump, from the United States, and we're getting not very much money for it, and the Americans are making an enormous profit. It's time that the Liberal government set aside their foolishness, set aside their very juvenile approach to business or governance, and understand that if you can't solve the problem, you've had half a year. You've done nothing but talk. Before that, you had a decade with nothing but talk. It's time for you to do the right thing by Canadians and get out of the way. However, Danielle Smith has one other hurdle. She has David Eby to consider. You don't even want to understand what this guy's got to say. I mean, it's amazing who votes for these people. They must not ask them a single question. Like, in my mind, they probably just look at a poster or something, because when you talk or when you listen to some of these far left leaders, you think to yourself, what? A little background. Premier British Columbia David Eby is feeling a lot of pressure because he's got horrible spending habits, just like everyone on the far left, and nobody has any money, and the crime is through the roof. On top of that, when Danielle Smith announced the $14 million investment in a new pipeline, David Eby came out and basically said, no, I'm not going to permit it to cross my province. And that in turn has got him a lot of pressure from the 40 or so communities that are staring at billions of dollars of investment or nearly 60% poverty across their region. Now, David Eby was rambling on and on. He was asked a simple question and he went on for about 5 minutes. It sounded very tantrum-like. However, there was a couple of things that were said in his tantrum that are pertinent to the pipeline and to Mark Carney not getting a deal and the economic prosperity and health of Canada.
British Columbia is poised to lead Canada into the new economy that we're all understanding is so crucial to create, one in which we're less dependent on the United States, one in which we're accessing world markets.
How do you want to access those world markets? Do you want to throw them across because you don't want to put them on a boat, apparently?
Real projects with proponents, with financing that are reaching final investment decision.
So he says that he's got a lot of projects in British Columbia that are reaching final investment decision. But if it's a final investment decision, that means they have not made a decision. So all you've got right now is just to talk. It's just I mean, you put in a lot of investment, and I'm sure there's been a lot of approvals and all the rest of that, but there's no shovels in the ground because there's no investment decision.
50,000 people helped to build LNG Canada Phase 1.
50,000 people helped to build LNG Canada Phase 1. 50,000, meaning that if we put one LNG in Churchill and one LNG in Labrador, we would recoup the 100,000 jobs that we've lost to the decisions of the American government to bring the auto industry back into their border. 50,000 jobs went into building LNG Phase 1. 50,000. I can't get over the amount of people that could be working, could be affording to buy a home, could be affording to pay for a car, could be affording to send themselves to good schools or to get good training or to invigorate local economies. 50,000 jobs went into Phase 1. And he says it like it means nothing. He's like, oh, well, 50,000 jobs already happened. And you're telling me that you're willing to stop 50,000 jobs. That's without considering the long-term jobs of who's going to build the port, who's going to work on the ships, who's going to maintain this and that and the other thing. I mean, you know, like the spill off is an amazing amount. If you're saying 50,000 people that were directly associated with the project, that indicates to me that there could be, as you know, even at a bare minimum, that's 60, 70,000 jobs because there's a spinoff. There's there's gas stations and corner stores and restaurants and clothing and repair shops. And there's so many things that go along with that because now people have money. 50,000 people have money and they need to take that money and invest it in things like people do. And he says it like it's no big deal. Like I don't believe that he understands that by saying that he actually exposes the fact that he's prepared and willing to stop at least 50,000 more jobs. And Mark Carney sits on his hands talking about how we're going to make trade with Europe. We're going to make trade with Donald Trump. And there's LNG ready to come out of the ground that would literally create hundreds of thousands of jobs in building the infrastructure. That's not working the job. That's not doing any of that. That's simply building the infrastructure. 50,000, 100,000. If we just look at Churchill, we look at Labrador, 2 new LNG, 50,000 jobs per. And that's not counting all the spinoffs, right? Like the shipping and the docks and the wharf and I mean, I just said it 3 times because I'm still having a little bit of a hard time grasping the fact that there's 100,000 jobs bare minimum on 2 projects. And Mark Carney's government says, nah, we're just waiting on Trump. It'll be fine. I know food prices are through the roof. You've got no place to live. You're worried about the fact that your family is going to be mad at you because you can't support them anymore because you've lost your job. And I appreciate further that many people in this country are talking about all of the trillions of dollars of resources that we have in the ground and all of the jobs and the amount of money that would be invested in an effort to retract or get those things out of the ground. But Mark Carney says, nah, it's not a big deal. I got a book that says it's values, and you should just go hungry. I'm not going to go hungry, mind you. I've invested my money in fossil fuels, and I have a private jet. But you are going to be in your mother's basement until you're 95 because, values. You can't be serious with this stuff. I can't even believe the far left. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Like, is there no one in far left that wants a good job?
Right now, the province of BC, the Premier of BC, is not a threat to the pipeline project of the Premier of Alberta because there is no pipeline project. There is a public relations department. There is a Crown Corporation with $14 million.
So you have final stages getting ready for investment approvals, and you're telling yourself those are projects, but she has a office set up and $14 million, and you're wanting me to believe that it's not a project. What I really love is this next line.
The only way currently that project is going forward is with tens of billions of dollars of public money.
Okay, so let me see if I understand this correctly. She has an office set up and she has $14 million, and you say that's not a project. And then your very next line, the very next thing out of your mouth is, the only way that project is going forward is with billions of taxpayers' dollars. Now, on the one hand, there is no project, so you can't ever think that there's going to be 10 billion or whatever you said in taxpayers' dollars because there's no project, like you just said. Or there is a project and you have no idea how it's going to be funded, and you're just trying to create something for Canadians to be afraid of. And it's the wrong time for that, bud, because everybody is well aware of the billions of dollars that the Liberal government has been wasting on all kinds of these things, and the billions of dollars that the Liberal government is going over the limit with the deficit spending. So to say, well, I can create 100,000 jobs with, $1 billion in taxpayers' money, I don't think it's going to bother anybody ever. They're going to be like, well, I'll have a job, so I'll pay the taxes. Rather than say, oh, this is a project that is not going to happen because it's only got a $14 million initial seed money. But, if you do get the project, which I think it is a project, it's going to cost. I just don't, I revert back to when I said at the beginning of this segment, what? Like, just make it make sense for me, because I really don't wrap my mind around the lack of cohesiveness in this man's argument. And who told themselves that, yeah, this is the guy that should be leading our province? Who told themselves that this is the genius that's going to be able to lead us into prosperity? This is the guy that I'm putting my cart behind. This is the guy for me. Unbelievable. There's no rhyme or reason to anything that he has to say. And at the same time as having no rhyme or reason, he's just throwing a tantrum because Danielle Smith correctly pointed out that he is getting in the way of prosperity for Canada. And now his feelings are hurt or something. I'm not 100% sure why he's so hostile and aggressive. However, I can say with absolute conviction that I don't think he has anything to contribute to this conversation except for negativity. We have a problem in this country that we need to fix, and no matter how much Mark Carney insists that he's going to be able to solve the problem, he clearly is not going to be able to solve the problem. And it's 50,000 local jobs or 100,000 or 200,000 local jobs in remote areas, which is going to infuse so much money, and there's no way in 100 years of trading with Europe is never going to compensate for that. Canada needs to realize that we have a problem. We need to solve it. And people who are currently in charge, some of them are not capable of solving the problem. And I believe it's time that we said so out loud. It's time that we made our leadership, our politicians, accountable for their actions, accountable for their words, because people's lives are suffering. And no matter what the CBC or the CTV or the Global want you to believe, hardship is happening to more and more and more Canadians every single solitary day. And the solution is simple. The solution is right in front of us. We simply do not have the leadership with the conviction to pull it off. That's just my opinion. You can let me know what your opinion is down in the comments. I'm going to wrap here. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.